Welcome everybody to Sports on Tap. This is our summer spotlight. This is our high school football quasi preview show. We're not going through official conferences so much, but we are talking with a lot of local head coaches throughout all of our conferences, and we're really pleased to be joined by two great coaches today. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by Avon head coach Mike Elder, but first we're joined by North Olmsted head coach Tim Brediger. We'll get to him here in a second. My name is Ed Dick, alongside our co-host, technical director Rob Troutman, our EVP of social media content and graphic design specialist. I just promoted you, Josh. Josh Jeffy, Dr. Hoops himself, Noah Jacobson, and of course, my cohort, my compadre, my colleague, Sean Duffy.
Hello.
You are watching this live on our YouTube channel, Sports on Tap, at SOT Podcast, where this and all past broadcasts are and will be archived. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all future broadcasts. Follow us on Twitter at SOT Podcast, also on Facebook at Sports on Tap, and this new thing called Threads that I found out about 3 weeks ago. But join it at SOT_podcast. That's our social media, EVP of social media content, getting us out there for things that I've never heard of. Check us out on our website, sportsontappodcast.com, for information about the show, and reach out directly to us at sportsontappodcast@gmail.com for questions, comments, feedback, and the like. Real quick, our sponsor is Ray Felton State Farm Insurance. Give them a call at 234-284-5996 for more information. And also check out his website, rayfelton.com. RRT Productions. RRT Productions delivers affordable, high-quality video services to all customers and clients. Check them out at rrt-productions.com for more information. Last and certainly not least, GV Art and Design. Check out gvartwork.com to find your favorite professional and college team and player-themed shirts and apparel. Use the promo code ONTAP10 at checkout to get 10% off of your order. And as we mentioned, we're going through. We're hitting the Great Lakes Conference and the Southwestern Conference tonight. We've as those of you who are new to our program, we cover four conferences: the Great Lakes Conference, the Southwestern Conference, the Greater Cleveland Conference, and the Suburban League. So we got a lot to get to and a lot to cover. And luckily and thankfully, we are joined by a head coach, a longtime coach at North Olmsted, that he is coming into his 11th season as the head coach of North Olmsted. He is a graduate of the school. I believe this is his 25th overall season coaching in North Olmsted. 8-4 last year, second place in the Great Lakes Conference West Division. Just a really successful season. We are joined by North Olmsted head coach Tim Brediger. Coach, thank you so much for taking time out of your day and out of practice to join us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, Coach, we usually, I know coaches like to look forward. We just want to take a quick step back about and talk very briefly about last year. The host of the playoff game, you guys beat Valley Forge, and you guys had a rough. You guys came up against a very tough opponent in Highland in the second round. But talk about the playoff experience last year, and just really how, talk about the season last year and that playoff experience you guys got.
I think the last season really began for us the year before, and we had a chance to go out and play TCC in the playoffs when these kids were all juniors. And I think it made them hungry for that atmosphere. And we got our doors blown off against Toledo Central Catholic, but it was that extra week of practice. It was that experience. It was the excitement in the building, I think, that motivated that group, to really have a great off season. And they kind of had goals to get back to that place and be in a higher seed where you have a situation to play a team that you match up better with. And, it's a fun year. Anytime you win, it's fun. But it was a special group of kids, a lot of seniors that were 3-year players for us. A lot of kids that were really in early camps when I first became a head coach. Some of those kids were in my first second and third grade camps, at that point. And now they're sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So you've seen that group come up together. And they set the tone then for what we now know as work. Every year you try to build on the year before, but when you have a group that's that successful, our expectations are even better now than they were, going in. So a lot of fun, a lot of great kids, and now we're back at it again.
Yeah, Coach, you mentioned before we went on that you're in your acclimation period right now, and And I don't think maybe a lot of our audience would know what that means, but kind of go through what your off season is like now. Now you're ramping up, getting into, next week's going to be the start of 2 days in official practices. So what's the, like your off season like, gearing up towards week 1 of the regular season?
Okay. So everybody does it a little different. We did 6 contact days in June early on while we were still in school with helmets on. And then we started on, I think it was June 13th with 3 to 4 days a week lifting and running in the morning. And then we mixed in 5 different 7-on-7 events where we had 3 or 4 teams come here. We went out to St. Ignatius one night with Nordonia and Benedictine and did a 4-way scrimmage out there with them in June. And then in July, we had, like I said, a couple more 7-on-7s here, along with lifting in the morning. And then we had some camp days last week, and now we're back into our acclimation. So it ends up being, I think we had 11. Ohio gives you 13 camp days. We used 11 this year, and now we're doing 5 acclimation days, this week. So that's 18 days. I lied. I can't add 16. I'm sorry. Plus, I think we had 18 workouts in the morning as well. So you're you're never not doing anything, and thankfully we got supportive families that get their kids to and from places and, try to work their vacations as best they can around schedules.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us. Wanted again to congratulate you on a good season last year. I noticed, just knowing the North Olmsted school system, I have some friends that have kids in there, and they got off to a late start last year because of some building consolidation, and you kind of are back on a normal schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's going to be helpful to your team a little bit? Because it kind of felt like, I think last year you guys weren't even in school for the first week or so.
I
week
think
1?
we played 3 football games last year before our first day of school.
Wow. Okay.
And it sounds great. It sounds like college where you've got these kids, 8 to 5 at night. The reality was it was long, it was very long, and you missed the excitement in the building, you missed, and this year, thankfully, we were away first game, then we have 3 home games. So it's awesome to be, when you have home games, It's great to be in school that way. The kids are now aware of, who you're playing. It's on the announcements, you have spirit days on Fridays. It's just, there's a little more excitement around it. It was different. Those were a lot of long days at the end of August.
Coach, thank you again for taking the time and joining us tonight. Xavier Bolston graduates at quarterback, and he was 2-time All-Ohio for you guys. But you're bringing in Tommy Horsfall at quarterback. Just kind of talk about what you have seen from him in camp so far and what he's going to bring to your guys' offense this year.
Yeah, Tommy is, you hate to compare quarterbacks, obviously, but similar to Xavier, and he's a big kid. He's 6'2", and he's very similar to Xavier probably as a junior, where Xavier was about maybe 180. Tommy's probably 175, and then Xavier went up to about 212 as a senior. I'm hoping Tommy gets to that at that point. But Tommy is he's a runner. He can scoop. So he will probably be a little more effective. And Xavier was great running the football, but he'll probably be a little more mobile than Xavier. He's got a good grasp of the offense since he's been doing it now, as a freshman and sophomore. So going into his junior year, it's his 3rd year with this offense. But there is a learning curve, right? I mean, we put a lot on Xavier's plate as a senior because Xavier was a very intelligent, academic type kid. Great leader, very vocal and commanded. We don't really huddle, but you'd say he commanded the huddle. But he got things going in practice and in the games for us, and never really got phased. Nothing really bothered him. So Tommy's got to learn a lot of those traits. And you don't learn those until you're in the fire. So we'll see how he is after the first couple games. And but he's a really good athlete, and he puts a ton of time and work outside of what we do. Very similar to Xavier. He does a lot of throwing and training on his own as well.
Yeah, Coach, talk a little bit about some of the players that you had last year. I mean, your team was sensational on both sides of the ball. I mean, your defense was very active. You put up a lot of points on offense. Who are some of the seniors last year that graduated, and who are some of the players that you feel are going to step into those roles this year, and you're really looking for them to pick up the slack and have a good year for you?
So obviously you start with Jared Kelly, who's a 2-time All-Ohio player who's at Kent State. He's a Division I athlete. And then Joey Wangstrom was our left tackle. He's going to Edinburgh on a scholarship. You're missing on the defensive side of the ball, Daniel Ferdui, and then Gavin Beasley, who was an All-Ohio nose tackle for us. I mean, I think between the two of them, they had 19 sacks. Doesn't matter how good your DBs are if you get 19 sacks, right? You can make them look pretty good by pressuring the quarterback. And there was a host of other seniors too, that graduated that were good role players and great kids in the team. As far as looking to see who takes those roles over, Colin Willard is obviously back. He had 17 touchdowns last year, an all-district player for us. He's been offered by Eastern Illinois. It's an FCS school and several Division II schools so far. Ironically, him and Jared during the track season were both, competing all year. They were both 10-7, 10-8, 10-6, 100-meter guys competing. So we've got that speed. The question is, it was nice to have Jared and Colin, right? Now you have Colin. We know what he can do. It's the question is, who's the next guy up that can, if people are taking away Colin or trying to take him away, how do we attack him? Logan Dangerfield will be a 3-year player for us at running back. His role will increase a ton. He'll be moving out to some wide out as well and running back. Matthew Chalkwater was a sophomore who I think in the Valley Forge playoff game had over 100 yards rushing for us, and he played outside linebacker. He'll have an extended role as well. Brady Haug was hurt for almost 7 games last year. He's probably one of our top 3 players. He missed 7 games last year. He's a defensive back and a wide out as well. So we have some weapons. The key is going to be who's going to be that sidekick now to Colin, But it might not be one guy. It might be 3 or 4. They might all have to have a different type of role. And we've spent really all offseason figuring out ways to hide, as much as we did with Jared, but even more with Colin. How do you get him in different formations, different spots? I mean, in our last week, he played in one of our team sessions. He played 5 different positions. He was an H-back, he was a tailback, he was a slot, he was a wideout, he was a tight end. I mean, he's a smart enough kid to handle that load, and we're gonna do that. So
we're talking with North Olmsted head coach Tim Brediger. Coach, coming into the last year of the GLC as we know it, can you? And I'm feigning a little bit of not feigning. This is more of this kind of a discovery question for me. With Parma no longer a school. How do you guys have divisions? How does the GLC work? Is it divisions or is it just one schedule that
so
most of your West Division still?
It's weird. So there's going to be no crossover this year. Now there was always a crossover at the end. There was like a championship type game. So there's still a West and an East. Fairview's still in it this year, but we lost the Parma school. So it kind of throws a wrench into there's an odd number, so there's, they started doing some mandatory crossovers. So we always have Buckeye as a crossover, and now they were kind enough to give us Buckeye and Holy Name. Which is fine. That's why you work hard. Play the best, right? Might as well.
Right.
It just bumped so now week 4 and 5 are crossovers, and then we don't really start our division until week 6, which is weird and kind of unique. And there's that last game is already predetermined. There's no crossover. So, and it'll be the last year. And then the following year, my understanding is it's just one 18 conference, and it'll kind of be like the old SWC when we were in there, where you have 3 non and you play 7 conference games, and, you find out who wins it that way.
And you're not conference this year. North Ridgeville, you replaced Green with Midview and Amherst. So lots of local flavor to it.
Yeah.
North Ridgeville, you're traveling North Ridgeville, and then as you mentioned, 3 home games.
Yeah.
Talk about the non-conference schedule a little bit and kind of what goes into that.
Well, it's nice because last year we drove the Green, Buckeye, and Amherst. So we had in a row. So we had 3 hour and 20-minute drive, and then a 45 and a 45. So it's nice to have those guys home. Green was awesome. It was a great atmosphere. They came up and beat us pretty good a couple years ago, and I think they finished in the Final 4 that year, and they beat Massillon. And then we went down there last year and lost the last 2 minutes. We scored 50 points. It was an awesome game, awesome atmosphere, but just a lot of travel for your JV or freshman and varsity people going. And Midview made sense. We've always scrimmaged them, and they were obviously in our conference for a while. And same with Amherst, we picked them up, and those are all good rivals. For a long time, it was fun to play those teams. They're somewhat close, and you still play them in basketball and baseball, non-conference a lot. So it was kind of nice to pick them back up. And basically, we're not in the SWC, but we're right around the SWC. And a lot of those SWC schools are in our playoff region anyways. So it's kind of nice after those first 3 weeks, you kind of have an idea, how would you fit in the SWC if you were still in there? And for us, these are three of the teams that are, I think, comparable in size roster-wise to us. Now, Ridgeville is on the uphill swing there with their roster size. And they had a good year last year, and I think they're going to get a lot better here with what they have coming up from their middle school and freshman class. And we picked up Berea Mid-Park as a scrimmage. So we've got 4 SWC schools in 4 weeks, which will be a very good test for us.
Hey, Coach, I'm curious. You've been around the obviously coaching for a long time. You've had a lot of experiences, but in your opinion, how has the game changed since you first started off? And has it changed for the better? Has it changed for the worse? I mean, that's kind of a loaded question. Change it for the worse, but
right.
What are some ways that it's changed for the better in your time and your tenure as coach?
I think for the better, I think player safety right now is at the high. I mean, we spent $7,000 this winter on Guardian caps and those under shoulder vests that we wore all summer, and 7-on-7s to protect kids from collarbones and things like that. And I think, the monitoring of the hitting and the limited amount of full go that we actually do anymore, especially we have 55, 60 kids every year, and by the time camp's done, you're at 50. It's that part to me is way different. We used to, I think like everybody, you'd have long 2-a-days or 3 practices and there was no limit. So I think the player safety is different. I think the development of the strength and conditioning programs is insane. We were fortunate. We hired a full-time guy a couple of years ago who's now a teacher in our building, and that's changed, our body types, what kids look like, when they come in and what they leave is totally different than it used to be, So that year-round training in all sports that's changed, I think, for the better for kids, just to make them better athletes, not just football kids. And I think, somewhat as a coach, I love it, but I think somewhat of a downswing is the amount of time that these kids are asked to be football players, and we try to do our best to share because if I want to be our basketball coach's best friend, and I want to be our baseball guy's best friend and track guy's best friend because we have the same players, and if that doesn't work out, then those kids are put in a bad situation to make a decision, and that's not what I want them to do. I have 2 kids of my own that play a ton of sports, and the last thing I ever want to do is have an adult put them in a situation where they have to make a decision. Let's give them as many opportunities to be as flexible as we can. But that's the one downside is it's a lot of football. It's a lot of football. Same with basketball. AAU, it's the same. It's a lot of everything. If you want to be good at it, you got to do a lot, and you just hope that kids don't burn out.
Coach, a question that we've been asking a lot of coaches that we talk to is, I think this is the second year of the accelerated kind of schedule for the offseason into the season.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you learned last year that you're applying to this year to kind of help that transition? I know, given my earlier question with the way your school was, you're kind of like, this may be your real first year with an actual regular, but
right.
Is there anything that you were able to draw on to help get your kids ready for week 1 that's like middle of August?
I think the big thing that we were doing, and some schools have done this, is we're not doing anything in the morning anymore. We stopped 2 weeks ago. Everything's at night. And we last year during camp, I remember there was days we had hoodies on, kids had Under Armour sleeves on because it was like 65 in the morning. And then we played Ridgeville the first game, and it was about 98 degrees, and we had 50 kids and they had 70 or whatever it was, and we lost that game in the fourth quarter. And so we kind of in the off season talked about it, and so we now are coming in at either 4 or 5, and we're going to 8 or 9. Next week we're going to be 4 to 9:30. That's our 2-a-day, and we're going to be 4 o'clock on the turf is pretty hot. Now noon would be crazy. I'm not that crazy, but I think getting them out there during normal game time where they're going to be playing and getting their bodies used to that climate at that time of the day is critical. And then also getting them used to the lights a little bit. The last half hour next week. 9:30, turn the lights on, start catching punts and balls in the lights. So those are some of the things that I think we switched. I also think there's, given my statement before, just being able to rest players. You've got those players that are multi-sport athletes that train all year, that are the high twitch, fast twitch kids. They don't necessarily need 100 reps because they've been doing things, 300 days a year. And we've got smarter, I think, having Jared and Colin, these track kids that are explosive. You just can't run them into the ground because they're two-way players. So we've been smarter with our reps and controlling them in practice. I think we learned that from last year. Those are probably the two biggest things that I think we're applying now.
Yeah, that was one of my questions actually was, I know you had a lot of two-way players. Jared Kelly, I mean, on offense was dynamic. I mean, every time he touched the ball, big things would happen. With this year's team, are there still a lot of two-way players on the team, or are you, like you just said, you're trying to go away from that? But we're
trying as best we can. And the funny thing, I guess, like in the SWC, you didn't see a lot of two-way guys other than maybe like Westlake, us, Amherst, Midview.
Yeah.
This conference we're in, you see a ton. Every roster is 45 to 60. And then by the time you see who's dressed in a game, it's usually closer to 50, because kids are hurt and things like that. So you have a lot of people that are either playing guys both ways or playing a lot of sophomores, which in the SWC, you don't see a ton of that, So that's one of the bigger differences in the GLC. Our goal is always to get as many kids involved as we can. And I would love to have nothing more than 11 guys here, 11 guys there, and then, but the reality is our goal would be to have like 2 O-linemen that go both ways, because those are the guys we want in the tent watching film in between series a lot. Hopefully our quarterback, he'll learn DB, but our goal is to not have to use him there. And then, D linemen, last year we were blessed. The 2 kids that were unbelievable and never played offense. I think one of them played about 2 plays a game in a goal line set. So they could come over and watch film and just get, they were 100 miles an hour, on defense. That's our goal. But the reality is we'll probably have 5 or 6 kids that are playing both. And we just have to pick your poison as to, which side of the ball you sub them on and the situation in the game you do it. I think we've learned like end of the first quarter is critical, to get them a little break right before the second quarter. And then somewhere in the middle of that second quarter, and then kind of sometimes you got to bite the bullet at the beginning of the fourth quarter too, so that way you have them that last 6 to 8 minutes. But yeah, there's some interesting conversations on the headphones.
Oh, I can only imagine.
In a close ball game.
And I'm sure a lot of these kids probably want to be out there, especially conditioning. I mean, these kids are conditioned like no other, and a lot of them probably can go both ways and have no problem with it, and they want to be out there and make the plays on both sides. But I know it's probably tough for you too. It's like, all right, get out of there. Just take a little bit of a break.
And sometimes it's literally, if you think about a football game, it's literally 2 plays, because there's a penalty, there's a stoppage, there's a special team play, and that 2 plays might be 2 full minutes, depending upon what happens during those plays. So.
Well, Coach, we are only 4 weeks away from the start of the high school football season, and you guys open up against an old Southwestern Conference 4 North Ridgeville. I mean, you guys faced them last year, and you fell short to them 34-21. Just talk about what are going to be the biggest keys to the game offensively and defensively in order for you guys to turn around and avenge last year's loss.
I mean, I would say first thing is hats off to Coach Morgan, because if you look back 2 years ago, we beat him by like 45. And I think that was in our kids' head going into the game. And as coaches, we kept telling them, like, we saw them scrimmage. They're good. They're better. They're more improved. And they came out and they smacked us. And we got our butt kicked. And we were in a dogfight that I don't think we were ready for. And hats off to them. They won it in the fourth quarter. They've got a tremendous running back that was a freshman that we had never heard of. And he's really good. They've got they had 2 edge guys that are very light, but they were like wideouts coming off the edge 100 miles an hour and gave our tackles some issues. So those are the things that, we're going to have to stop the run, obviously, and we're going to have to be able to protect when we throw, and we're going to have to try to control the football, because they're going to obviously try to do the same thing on their side of the ball. And they ran some nice wing counter plays that caught us off guard at the end of that game, and we got a little undisciplined. But it'll be a good game. Coach Morgan's done a great job since he's taken over, and they've got some excitement back there in Ridgeville. They got great numbers. And again, a lot of our kids know those kids. They play baseball together. They play basketball against each other. It's, our kids know all those kids. They know our kids. So it'd be a good kind of backyard brawl football game. And we've had a nice challenge to our kids all year, about that game. And we were not ready. And part of that's my fault as a head coach. And we learned from it. And we went to Green the next week and played a really good team. And then we ended up rattling off, I think, 7 in a row. So that was, tell our kids, like, it's all right to, respond to the first punch, but I'd rather not get punched. So we need to be ready and not have to get waken up, so.
We're talking with North Olmsted head coach Tim Brediger. Coach, last question. You've been with North Olmsted for a long time, in the head coach capacity, assistant coach capacity, and the like. Talk about your involvement and your staff's involvement in the youth program, mm-hmm. and how that has been, how that's kind of served as a feeder program, for the varsity squad.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just our rec center the last 3 to 4 years has really bought in, as a community to being our feeder program. Our city just invested in our rec center. We have a brand new indoor turf facility that we were able to use all winter, which is awesome. And it's literally a mile from our high school. So those two things are great. There was a little bit of time there where there wasn't a lot of go-between with the rec center, and there wasn't a lot of communication, and we've got it now, and it's outstanding. Our middle school right now, our 8th grade has 46 kids in helmets, and our 7th has 30. And, we haven't seen numbers like we've had one teams in my 11 years here in the 40s in 8th grade. So now we'll have the current juniors had 40, and now this coming 8th grade class has 46. So I think when they built this new complex, there was some families that moved in with young kids, and now we're going to build that other complex, the K through 5 building. That'll be, I think, breaking ground the end of this year. And I think that'll attract some more young families in North Olmsted. And our kids love working youth camps. It's fun. I mean, we just did a middle school camp. We didn't charge any kids. It was just to get kids out there, have fun, teach them what we're doing. And I think our high school kids are learning almost more about the game from that than they do sometimes in our practices, just how to coach, how to inspire little kids, and how to give back. It's been fun to watch.
There's one 8th grader in particular. His name is Maston Krokmeyer. His father is one of my best friends from Brunswick here. Quite honestly, I'm trying to get him to come back here. But
Maxton looks like a sophomore right now. Yes, we're going to keep him.
I've seen him a couple times this summer at some of our friends' events, and mm-hmm. dude's gonna be a beast. I don't want to put too much pressure on him. He may be listening, regardless. But Coach, thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to seeing what the Eagles can do this year. And their season kicks off August 18th at North Ridgeville before they run off 3 straight games at home and then start GLC conference play. Coach, best of luck to you this year, and we'll hopefully check in with you and maybe some of your players as the season rolls on.
Thank you guys very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks,
Good
Coach.
Talking with you.
Thanks, Coach.
Take care.
That was North Olmsted head coach Tim Brediger, longtime coach at North Olmsted, graduate of the school. Mr. North Olmsted is probably a good way of putting it through all the years he's put in there. And he mentioned the move. I think their move to the GLC has been a really, really good one for them. They had a lot of success last year in conference play, and as he mentioned, a lot of those schools that they're in the GLC with are like-sized. Rob, when you were covering them as far as in the Southwestern Conference, they were able to spring some upsets. Like, they by no means were they an easy out, but the numbers tend to take over at a certain point, and that that will obviously speak to the next coach we talked to here with Mike Elder from Avon, who has just been phenomenal. The overall record speaks for itself, and just what they've done with that program, just almost a slow build up to where they are. And I think Coach Elder's just about to join us. Let's talk about our sponsors here real quick. Ray Felton, State Farm Insurance again. Make sure you give them a call at 234-284-5996. RRT Productions, rrt-productions.com, and then GV Art and Design, gvartwork.com. And we are joined by Avon head coach Mike Elder. This is coming into his, I believe, his 17th season as the head coach at Avon. The record is just out of this world. And like myself, he is an alumni of Mount Union College. When we were there, it was Mount Union College, but not so much anymore. We are joined by Avon head coach Mike Elder. Coach Elder, thank you so much for joining us. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, Coach, we have a lot to talk about for this coming season. Let's take a very, very brief step back to last year. Southwest Conference champions, a 12-2 overall record. A tremendous season. Unfortunately, an unfortunate loss to the eventual state champions in Toledo Central Catholic. But just briefly talk about the playoff experience and what you guys accomplished last year and how that maybe can serve as a springboard to this year.
Yeah, last year our final record was 12-2, and interestingly enough, I would probably tell you that was probably one of our best football teams. And so you look at our record, and our 2 losses were to eventual state champs. That's something that we lost to Glenville early on, 27-21, and then later on in the year, Toledo Central Catholic unfortunately got us in the regional final. But that was a really good football team we have with a lot of returning starters, and we had high expectations, and our goal was to win a state championship, and we fell short. But I will tell you that those kids, maximized their abilities and talents, and in my opinion, they'll go down as one of the best teams that Avon's ever had. So going into this year, we have a lot of holes to fill, but we're excited about that. I know kids are excited to get their opportunity, and hopefully that experience last year and the disappointment losing to those 2 state champs will help us move forward.
Yeah, it seems like every year you guys, lose a lot of players, but you every year there's a new guy that steps up. You bring back Ja'Cory and Caffey, and you bring back other great players on your team. Talk about the seniors that you do lose, and then some of the players that are coming back and will step up and play huge for you this year.
Yeah, last year was, one of the best senior classes we'd ever had, but it was led by Sam DiTilio at quarterback. He was a 2-year starter for us, and he'll be playing football at Case Western Reserve next year. The leadership of that young man was incredible and something that's sorely missed, but I feel like our seniors are trying to fill those shoes. And then we also had Cam Santee, who's off to play college football at Holy Cross. Austin Mitchell, who was a 4-year starter in Avon, which is unheard of. Maybe one of the finest football players we ever had, and he's at Ohio University playing. And the list goes on and on. It was a senior-laden team, and those guys certainly left their mark on Avon football. But what I love about our program is the fact that guys like that in that kind of class, I always tell our seniors, you have a chance to be successful this year, but based upon what you do and how you lead and what you show the underclassmen, it potentially is going to carry on for the next 2 years. And so, I think this year's senior class has learned from those guys, and hopefully we always say tradition doesn't graduate, and hopefully it will not. But our senior class this year, I think, has learned a lot, following those guys, and now they're leading and hopefully going to have us in a position to be successful this year and hopefully for the next few years.
Let's try this again, Coach. Sorry, I was muted myself. So we'll try this again. Promise this isn't my first show. But with that being said, having that disappointment of last year, thinking that was the team that was going to win that state championship, how do you and your coaches go along with preaching that leadership of this senior team now to not so much look back, but instead look forward and build on what you guys had last year?
Yeah, it's interesting because I always say our goal is to be the best version of ourselves. And there's some years where you can have a great team and a great season and somebody else is just a little better. Sometimes you have to tip your hat to the opponent. And I feel like we were evenly matched with TCC, but they beat us on that day in those circumstances. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. But our players recognize that your successes certainly don't help you moving forward. We talk all the time about that, especially this year. We have 1 returning starter on defense, 5 coming back on offense. And our players understand that last year's success is last year's success. And the same holds true with the failure. You know, we lost to 2 teams last year, and we didn't ultimately accomplish our goal, but that has no bearing on this season. So I think our players are really process focused. We had a great practice today. We had 2 practices for that matter, and they were dialed in, and they understand that we're a work in progress. And in Avon, we always say we want to be playing our best football week 10. This year, that takes on a new meaning because we play our rivals week 10. But obviously, we want to be playing our best football at the end of the year, and great teams continue to grow every week. And so I can promise you by week 1, Brunswick we'll be better than we are right now, but we will only be a shell of what we can become, I'm sure.
And Coach, I mean, thank you again for taking the time. I know it's a busy time of the year for all coaches, and we were on with the North Olmsted coach, and we all realized prior to this call that 2-a-days start next week, and that's crazy. But you know, one of the things I want to talk about is some of the kids you do have coming back this year, and what your team looks like this year. What are some of the kids that we need to be on the lookout for as far as names from Avon? I obviously you were very senior heavy last year, got a little bit younger, going in this year. But what are some of the kids we need to be on the lookout for?
Yeah, on the offensive side, we'll start there. Is Jacorian Caffey obviously is committed to the University of Cincinnati. He is a special player and has a chance to rewrite the record books in Avon, in every category as a running back. And what makes him the best is that he's a captain of our team and very humble young man, unselfish. He's an every down back. He pass protects as well as he runs the ball. Great target out of the backfield. But it all is going to start with him as our running back. And then fortunately, he has 4 offensive linemen returning. Our center's back. His name's Connor Bingham. He'll be a junior. Our right tackle, Luke Hamilton, who's committed to the University of Michigan, is back. We have our left guard, Matt Muir, back, and we have our left tackle, Matt Alsbach, back. And so that's a great place to start if you want to have a solid running game with 4 offensive linemen and your tailback back. Evan Huff at tight ends played a significant amount of minutes last year. He wasn't a starter, but he played behind someone really good, and so we feel good about him. And then Nolan Good is going to be a junior, and he'll probably step in for us at quarterback. Very athletic. I think a tremendously high ceiling. I personally think he'll end up being a really good college quarterback, and you guys will be talking about him a great deal. We moved him up as a freshman in our program, and we don't do that often. But we moved him up because we felt like, hey, by the time he is a sophomore, he has to be a backup, which he was for Sam DiTilio. And then as a junior, now he's been in our system for 2 years getting coached, and we feel like he's kind of playing like a senior at this point. On the flip side, the defensive side, tons of new faces. I won't even speculate who's going to win these competitions. The only good news is there's a lot of competition on that side of the ball, and there's a lot of guys hungry, and they want to play. And we have a roster of 118 kids, 10 through 12, which is a testament to the culture of our program and kids wanting to be part of it. And so I'm very convinced that we'll figure out through Maslin and Toledo Whitmer, who can tackle and who can run around and make plays on defense. But Cole Panessa is one of those returning starters. Nolan Good would have been as a corner, but he's now our quarterback. Our defensive coaches like to remind me of that. And then we have other guys who played significant minutes, but not necessarily as starters. Connor Rawlinson's a kid you'll hear about. He's got offers to play college football next year, and he'll be playing safety for us. Carson Canning is a safety who got significant minutes a year ago. And then there's lots of others, but we have talent. We just have inexperienced talent right now.
We're joined by Avon head coach Mike Elder. Coach, as you mentioned, you're going to start the year off at home against Brunswick, a relatively familiar foe through regular season and through scrimmages over the last few years. Canton McKinley, you're going out to Canton McKinley, and then you're hosting Glenville. You're replacing a Greater Cleveland Conference school with another Greater Cleveland Conference school. Then instead of the South Carolina school, you got Canton McKinley. As you mentioned, there's no breaks off the rip, especially when you got the defending Division IV state champions in week 3. So talk about how the non-conference schedule kind of shapes up for you before you get to Elyria.
Yeah, I'm excited about our non-conference schedule because we in Avon, our kids want to play in big-time high school football environments. that's why they do all that work in the off season. They've earned the right to play in meaningful games. And now with the expansion of the playoffs and 16 teams, I think more teams should probably take more risks, but we don't have a lot of people calling us up and saying, hey, we want to play Avon. So the people who are willing to play us, we say yes, because we need games. I think this is our last year playing Brunswick, and they've told us they're going to drop us. Unfortunately, Medina last year, which I thought should be a forever game, they dropped us. So we struggle to find some games, but Brunswick is going to be a big test right out of the gate. It's a Division I opponent, well coached. And then week 2, like you mentioned, we get to go over to Hall of Fame Stadium, Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, and play in an awesome venue against a great program in Camp McKinley. We'll see tons of athletes. And then Coach Ginn and I have developed a friendship and a relationship where, we respect who they are, they respect us, and we both value great competition. And I hope that game continues forever as far as I'm concerned. And then we get into our league, and you guys know all about our league. Some of the greatest coaches in Ohio are in this league. And week in and week out, if you don't come ready to play, you will lose in the SWC. I promise you that. If you make mistakes, people will take advantage of it.
Coach, thank you again for taking the time and joining us. There's been a lot of changes in the Southwestern Conference recently. I mean, new head coaches, and that, Elyria, they got the new head coach and Brian Fox. Midview's got Jack Armstrong. And just kind of talk about how excited they are to join the SWC this year, and how they gonna make you a big test for you guys in the SWC.
Yeah, anytime a new coach comes into a community and program, it's a new excitement, and generally you're able to get some kids out for football that maybe hadn't been out, at least historically. As I've moved around jobs, it's been awesome to try to sell a new program when you do that. So, I don't know any of the new head coaches on a personal level other than Coach Fox, who's going to be at Elyria, and I think that was a great hire for Elyria. He's a tremendous coach. But I know that Amherst also has a new head coach. But in our league, I mean this when I say it, there is some really good football coaches. There are really good football coaches in our league, and I promise you, if you do not show up ready to play and you take anybody lightly in the SWC, you will lose. And I think that's what's made it so impressive, and why we're so proud of winning outright, or at least a share of, the conference championship 7 years in a row. Because in those games, and in those 7 years, there are 2 or 3 times every year where it's 14-7 at halftime against someone who you're expecting, hey, maybe they won't show up today. But I'm excited for the new coaches, because I think they're going to give those programs a shot in the arm and just make the league better overall.
Do you remember your first year at Avon? What it was like? That was so long ago, and you've come a long way where you've built that consistency. Do you remember your first year and maybe talking to some of the coaches in conference and what your questions were and how you can build a relationship and learn?
Yeah, when I got to Avon 16 years ago, we had 35 guys out for football the year prior to my arrival. I was super excited because we had 52 kids out, 10 through 12, my first year. And we went 6-4. Ryan O'Rourke, the head coach at Firelands now, was my quarterback as a junior that first year. And then the second year, by year 2, we were in the playoffs and in the regional finals. And then when you thought you arrived, my third year, we were 6-4 again. And you got humbled real fast. But over time, we've built this thing. But I do remember looking at the Shoremen, our rivals, this rivalry with us and Lake, they call us South, we call them Lake. It is a respectful rivalry. I don't really appreciate when rivals talk trash about each other, because without your rival, you wouldn't have a rivalry. And Dave DeLucas over at Lake, they were the people that we aspired to be. So I actually asked a lot of questions about them. And I asked, their numbers and how did they get their numbers up? And it seemed like every year, okay, this is year to get them, kind of like Avon this year, right? We've lost all these players, new faces everywhere, except they're replacing 25 seniors with 25 seniors. And I think that is the formula for any coach out there who listens to this. You need to play seniors. And so how do you keep them in your program? How do you get kids in a fast food society where they want instant gratification, they want success right away, to wait their turn? And in Avon, we get kids to wait their turn. Some kids don't start till their senior year in Avon. And this year, that will be the case in a lot of positions. And that's so fun as a coach to see a kid who has just grinded it out, played JV football, understand the development, helped make our team last year better, but finally gets their opportunity. So if I were those coaches, I'd certainly be studying, Olmsted Falls. I'd be studying the Shoreman. I'd be studying Berea. I think he's doing a great job and got that program on the brink. And some of these programs who have consistently been good. North Ridgeville, by the way, they're going to be outstanding this year. Their coach is doing a good job. So if I was new, I'd be looking at every program and trying to steal something from it.
Coach, you bring up a great point in your numbers. And one of the things that is just blows me away every year is your youth program and how popular that is. And I've seen it firsthand because I coached my sons in the Little Southwest Conference last year. And you're right. We could barely, he's a third and fourth grade team. We could barely field a team. But you look over and you see Avon Lake. They got 1, 2, 3 teams that they're trying to schedule for, and they're asking us, "Hey, you want to come play on a Saturday?" We're like, "No, we can't. We don't have enough. We don't have enough kids." But it's really awe-inspiring, especially what you've done in the youth program. Can you talk a little bit about how that's changed for you? You said you've been in it with Avon for 16 years. How that focus has been there for you on the youth program.
Yeah, well, it starts with having great men with the right vision running those programs. And unfortunately, in a lot of communities, what I see is some fathers who step in that role, and then when their kids leave, they're gone. And I'll be honest, like when they hired me at Avon, I had young kids. My youngest son now is a sophomore in our program. And so I have actually went from like our practice to right out to the field and practicing the youth program. So what better way to want something to be really good than when your own child is part of it, right? But what we have stressed is participation and playing time over winning at that level. And I think a lot of people want to win the mythical 5th grade championship or 6th grade championship and 7th grade championship. And the truth is, it's okay if they're keeping score. You want to win the game. But when you make decisions of how you're going to put your teams together, you should always prioritize playing time and growing and learning over winning. I see a lot of teams who put together all-star teams like, oh, we're going to put all of our best kids on one team, and then we're going to put the other kids on another team. And they're in 6th grade. I mean, you don't know who's going to grow, who's going to be a late bloomer, who might not grow another inch and has won the race to puberty. So in our program, K-12, it's worked for us where we've just really stressed the importance of participation and playing time over winning and losing. And oh, by the way, my 7th and 8th grade teams, because we split them, we have 2 7th, 2 8th grade teams. We don't go undefeated. We go 4-3. Sometimes we go 2-5. That keeps kids hungry. You know what I mean? As opposed to the team where they had 35 kids in 7th grade. They played 17 of them, and they played the whole time, and they won every game, and they went undefeated. So kids got discouraged and quit. And now by the time they're sophomores, there's 13 of them playing. And all of a sudden, my kids who continue to play and develop and grow, we lose the battles, but we win the war at the end.
Right. We're talking with Avon head coach Mike Elder. Coach, the level of success is well documented, and you're well known for deep playoff runs. And as you're talking about how your seniors now or year after year usually have to build up to get to that point, when they're underclassmen and they're freshmen and sophomores and even juniors, how important are those extra 4 or 5 games that you guys have earned through your seeds and through your playoff victories for the development of the following year?
That's a really good question, and something that we spend a lot of countless hours on as a staff. And our players would tell you, we're in the playoffs, and we shorten practices as the season goes on, so that by the time we're in week 14 or 15 of the playoffs, we have about an hour and a half practice happening. But then the seniors come over, I talk to them and the varsity players, and we send them off, and we're still getting a 2-hour practice in because that last 30 minutes now is time to work on the future and next year's. And so you're right. Some teams have turned in their equipment 5 weeks ago, and we've got extra 5 weeks of practice. You multiply that over 2 years, that's an extra season that we've got to coach our players and kids. But you have to be intentional about it, and I think our coaches are. We're always talking in staff meetings about the winning it now, and then is there somebody we should be moving or changing positions because we'll take the seniors out of the equation. And I'm talking like week 6 of this season, we'll have a meeting where we're talking about the following year, and we're spending time on it. And it's not a disrespect to the current team, because certainly our focus is there. But if you want to have a successful program, not just a good team every now and then, you're constantly looking at the next step and making sure kids go to the right position. Because nothing's worse as a head coach, and we've done it, we're certainly humans and not perfect, than when you go through an entire season and then you realize the following year, that kid's going to be better served to help us at this position. And now we lost 15 weeks of practicing them at safety as opposed to corner, say. So you got to revisit that as the season goes on and look at your future. And we play 2 JV games every Saturday, and that's been really helpful to us as well.
Hey, Coach, I was curious. You have a large program, and part of a job as a head coach of a larger program and high school programs in general is that aspect of college recruiting. And I don't think people realize, how important of a job that is and what kind of a job that is for a head coach. And now you add this NIL. How has that college recruiting, how has that gone for you? How has that changed in your career as a head coach? And if you can comment on how NIL, if it has affected any of that as well in your role as head coach of the Avon Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly evolved and it's changed. I always laugh at the joke, like as soon as the season ends, people are like, what are you going to do with all your time? And little do they know it's a year-round program, because you go from the season and the grind of a season, which we all enjoy, to now you're preparing for recruiting and trying to help your seniors find homes. And then that goes right into your off-season workouts that generally start up in January. And the training never ends. It's year-round. And then obviously our kids who play multiple sports, which in Avon we have tons of kids that play multiple sports. We're there to support them there. But the college recruiting has definitely changed, and the transfer portal is really significant in terms of probably taking more opportunities away from high school seniors. So, for instance, we have 2 kids right now who have been blessed to receive scholarships at Division I schools, Power 5, Cincinnati and Michigan. But you're seeing more and more a kid that's a MAC level player now signing Division II scholarships. You're signing kids that could have been D2 players getting D3 offers. A kid that was a Power 5 maybe ends up in the MAC. Because everybody wants to, it's a win now or you're going to lose your job if you're a college coach. And a lot of people are visiting the portal to steal kids that are more mature and ready to play. And it's more become a farm system at some of these places. But we're lucky that we've had a lot of kids go on to play college football. And when every college coach comes through Ohio to recruit, they're walking through the halls of Avon. And our building and our staff and our principal and superintendent are very welcoming of them. And we make sure they have access to our kids and do so in a manner where they're not missing instruction. And our kids who are good enough are going to get found in Avon. I'm more concerned with the transfer portal because I think kids who used to be scholarship worthy kids at a higher level now are falling down to the lower levels. And then unfortunately, some of these kids are going to D2 schools and they're going there with the idea that if I play really well and become all conference and I become an All-American, then I can transfer up. And the same thing's happening with the MAC. Hey, I'll transfer up. And I thought that was horrible. Like, where's the loyalty with this? But to be honest with you, college coaches are recruiting our kids in that capacity. I had the college coaches in the MAC telling our kids, come here because you can play right away. And if you play right away and you're successful, you'll have all kinds of opportunities at a Power 5 school and NIL deals. And I'm like, wow, this is the world we're living in. And we just have to deal with it and adapt as it goes. But one of my concerns is that you're going to have a lot of kids who go off to college and they transfer 2 or 3 times with this portal. And they're going to leave with the most important thing, without the most important thing, which is a degree. And so that concerns me. But we have a kicker who was at Ohio University, freshman All-American, who's now kicking for Wisconsin. And he got an NIL deal and he's kicking. And I couldn't be upset with him. And when he was telling his coaches, I was like, man, they were the only ones who really took a chance on you and gave you a scholarship. What are you doing? But of all those coaches at Ohio University, and they said it to me themselves, if they had an opportunity to all go to Wisconsin, they would go. They would leave tomorrow to better themselves. So why are we preventing our kids from doing that? So I'm old school, but I have to kind of just probably be more understanding with this thing because I don't love it personally.
Yeah, I think we're all, it seems like, learning kind of how it works. I mean, we're still, it's an interesting concept, but yeah, sometimes it works for the kids and sometimes it doesn't. I think it's interesting too, for our show, we've had a lot of college coaches, start following us. And especially, when we're interviewing coaches like you and kids even on here, the student athletes when they're on our show, the college coaches are kind of listening in, and some of these college coaches say, "Oh, we saw your show from." I mean, I have no idea who some of these college coaches are. We'll be roaming the sidelines. We say, "Oh, we saw your show. Great interview with whoever, Ja'Cory and Caffey. Just seems like a level-headed kid, great personality, and a really nice kid." And I think they're listening to a lot of coaches and what they have to say, and you've done a great job with your program. And a lot of the kids, when we interview them after games, just very respectful, good kids, and they're a lot of fun to interview as well. And one question I was going to ask with Ja'Cory, he's a sophomore playing at a high level for you. He's been playing since he's a sophomore. Now he's a senior this year. How tough is it to make that decision when they're sophomores saying, you know what, I think he's ready to play on Friday nights? Even though he's a sophomore, I think he's ready to play at that level.
Yeah, I mean, you just know some kids are just different and they're special. And Ja'Cory is that kid. And as a freshman, he probably could have played more for us too, but he was behind some really talented guys and got a few carries as a freshman as well. But Ja'Cory is an interesting story. He moved into Avon because I think his intent was that he was going to go to St. Edward's. That's where he was planning on going. And he ends up on my middle school football team. And I identified that he was pretty talented in 7th and 8th grade when he was at Avon, and established a really good relationship with him. And by developing that relationship, I was able to convince him that he could get everything he wanted out of football if he stayed in Avon. And, he's given our program probably more than we've ever given him because he's just such a great kid. And I'm so happy for him to be going to Cincinnati, and the opportunity for him that lies ahead is well-deserved. One of the most remarkable young men you'll ever meet. He's really a great kid who deserves the opportunity.
We're talking with Avon head coach Mike Elder. Coach, as a we've had the I'll be a little selfish here. I went to Mount Union as well. I played for Coach Karras, along with a lot of other coaches that you've coached against and that we've talked to. And we've seen Matt Candle, Jason Candle, even Nick, obviously Nick Sirianni, as at the highest of levels. Talk about just very briefly talk about your experience at Mount Union and just really how that has carried through all the way to where you're at now.
Yeah, I was at Mount Union from '89 to '92, and obviously their first national championship was in '93. That. So I just missed it. And then I coached there in '99, and they had won 54 straight games, 3 national titles. And by the way, that year I coached, we went 12-1 and didn't win it. And then they went on to win 55 more. So I'm a trivia question, and I am the only guy associated.
Goodness.
The only guy associated with Mount Union for 4 years in the '90s not to win a national title. That's me, this guy right here. But, I love that place, and my relationship with Coach Karras is strong to this day. We just took our team second week in July to team camp. We go to the University of Mount Union every year, unless we were traveling, which we've done twice where we've gone to Florida. So we stay in the dorms there, and we spend 3 days on that campus and get better and make it all about football. And I was blessed this year to have Coach Karras come in and talk to my staff and team. My Coach Karras, that's Larry Karras, legendary head coach. And then Jeff Dart, the current head coach, also spoke with our team. So my ties there are pretty strong. I love that place. I love what it's done for me personally. And obviously I'll always support them, and hopefully they'll get it done and win that national championship this year, because I think they got a lot of returning guys. Got to meet the quarterback while I was there and a lot of their players. So, but I'm a proud alumni, certainly, of the University of Mount Union now.
It's still weird for me to say that. I still prefer Mount Union College, like Muck, MUC. But as you mentioned, I'm a little old school as well, and we kind of just got to get used to some of the newer things that are going on for sure.
Yes, sir. No question.
Coach, we want to thank you again for joining us. You are the first game for Avon is a home game against our beloved Brunswick Blue Devils, at least for 3 of us here. So that'd be a tremendous atmosphere, a tremendous game before you go on the road to Tom Benson Stadium and play Canton McKinley. Coach, we can't thank you enough for the time, especially in the middle of your of what's going on. And hopefully we'll catch up with you and some of the players over the course of the year, and hopefully another long, lengthy playoff run as we've grown accustomed to from Avon football.
Hey, thank you guys very much for having me on, and more importantly, for having our players on. This is a great experience for them, and what you guys do is awesome. And I'm a fan. I tune in. I watch all your other interviews, and great job. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, Coach. That was Avon head coach Mike Elder, and we were previously joined by North Olmsted head coach Tim Brediger. So we had some Great Lakes Conference flavor and some Southwest Conference flavor there as well. We had the opportunity last week to talk to a newcomer to the Greater Cleveland Conference with Kahari Hicks from Cleveland Heights, and as our previews roll on, our previews again aren't going to be necessarily conference centric. We thought this year would be a little different to bring the coaches on and talk about their conference, talk about their non-conference, and everything that you guys have seen up to this point. Rob, I think we're working on something. I think we're working on guests for next week.
Yeah.
Do we have anybody confirmed yet?
Yeah, Coach Salter from Twinsburg is confirmed, and then we're working on the second one right now. We again haven't heard from a few coaches that I sent some emails and try to make contact. So we'll see what the second guest will be. But Coach Salter from Twinsburg, he's in his second season. He's excited to come on next week and talk a little Tiger football.
So we got the First League National Division next week there, Sean.
That's fantastic. But you know what's great? You know what's awesome?
No.
We are 2 weeks away, really, from scrimmages. We are 4 weeks away from week 1. And guys, if we haven't told them yet, we got to tell them now. Let's be serious. If you're looking for the best high school football coverage in Northeast Ohio, I don't know what more we have to do, but smash the like button, hit the notifications bell, go to our YouTube page and look at all of our interviews, all of our shows, all of our previous shows. It's going to get better. It's going to get awesome. We're gearing up for 2023 regular season high school football in Northeast Ohio. We're talking Suburban League. We're talking Greater Cleveland Conference. We're talking the Great Lakes Conference. And oh, by the way, we're talking the Southwestern Conference. I don't know what more you want. I don't know what more you need. But guess what? If you want it and you need it, tell us and we'll bring it to you. That's what we do here at Sports on Tap. But the only way you get that is to go to our YouTube page, subscribe, like, and follow us, share a comment. We're ready to go. We are amped the freak up, guys. Let's do this.
That's right. They got to be excited to see Dr. Hoops out. He's not covering hoops, folks. He is covering football.
Sean, that's a great effort, Sean. And I think he just got a promotion, Ed. I think he's now the SOT hype man.
Yeah. I need to add that to my opening script here.
I've been dying for a nickname for a long time, and I kind of feel like Josh has climbed the ladder at Sports on Tap. He started out as a lowly intern. Now all of a sudden he's the executive vice president and graphics design resident or whatever it is.
Resident.
Well, we have a Dr. Hoops. Now we can have Professor Hype.
I'm just typing in director of hype.
Nice. I like that.
Well, all right. It's official. Sean Duffy is in addition to being my cohort, my colleague, and my compadre, he is the director of hype.
So you know what that stands for, Sean? Dope.
I knew it.
Oh boy.
No, but
I wish I could say I planned that, but I did not. That's fantastic.
But I gotta tell you, I'm super excited for this season, guys. I really think in every single conference that we cover, there's a couple teams that will always be there because it's just the way their programs are. Avon Lake, but I mean, you're looking at overall, it might be one of those Wild West seasons in a lot of these conferences. We don't know who's going to happen. And we may see a couple teams like a Twinsburg, even Coach Elder said in North Ridgeville on the come a little bit in the Southwestern Conference. You never know, guys. But guess what? Guess who's talking about him? This guy. Sports on Tap. That right there. That's what we
right,
do.
Buddy. Sean, you're money tonight, man. You're on fire right now.
No,
follow up.
Let's keep that noted too. That both coaches tonight did mention mention a lot North Ridgeville. So
yeah,
I think the secret's out on them. So we'll have to really be paying attention, and Rob will have them in the SWC covered as well. We'll definitely be at some of their games for sure.
Yeah, we talked to Coach Morgan last year. Go ahead.
Sorry, Rob.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why when we talked to Coach Morgan last year, I mean, the group of players that he has, all the way from like freshman to sophomore levels, I mean, they haven't had these like expectations for like almost like 10 years. And that's why we at Sports on Tap are excited to like cover these guys, because they're going to have like big competition in the Southwestern Conference with like the big time teams. And that's why we're excited to like cover them and all the other teams at Sports on Tap.
Yep. You got it, buddy. A lot of great teams.
And we got some new blood coming in from Cleveland Heights, who is a very storied program for the Lake Erie League. So for them to come over to the Greater Cleveland Conference, as Coach Hicks mentioned last week, the LEL is a great conference. What LEL does not provide that the Greater Cleveland Conference does are the numbers. All Division I schools, except for a couple, they're bringing their rival with them in Shaker Heights, who is a familiar Greater Cleveland Conference foe, and to a lot of teams that have played there. So, and you're the best coverage you're going to get for Cleveland Heights, for Shaker Heights, for North Ridgeville. It's going to come from us. With all due respect to all the other outlets out there, the four conferences that we cover, you're going to get front to back coverage of all these conferences. As Rob mentioned, we're still looking for another coach for next week. We have Twinsburg's head coach coming on from the Suburban League National Division. If you're listening to this, reach out to us. Let's get you on, and then we'll talk. Hopefully, we'll be able to talk to players over the course of the season.
Yeah,
our players, all of that will go through the coaches and the athletic directors. So we will be reaching out to many of the coaches as well to make sure that it's all right for us to talk to the players.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing we've learned is, with everything going on now, obviously you want to go to the head coach and make sure it's okay with them to talk to the kids. But it's great once we have the kids on. It's a fun interview and to see their perspective on the season and just have some fun with them. Let them be kids, but they're athletes and they love coming on. Some are more entertaining than others, some are nervous, but we're just here to have fun and kind of promote the programs and the student athletes. So it's going to be a fun year.
The only way you can see all this great content that we're bringing to you is, one, subscribe to the YouTube page. Also, I don't know why you're not following us on Twitter, Instagram, this new thing called Threads. Listen, we're all over the place. You want the best high school sports in Northeast Ohio, you got to follow us. We're out there. We're making it happen. Dr. Hoops is constantly on Twitter dropping knowledge, and no one's listening.
Man.
We need to get the numbers up.
No, you were money with your previews and got a lot of comments and likes, and I know a lot of guys were thanking you for doing that. So great job with that. They were loving it.
It's gonna be a
thank
fun
you,
season.
Rob. I really appreciate it. And guys, being with like Sports on Tap since October, it's just been amazing, and I just can't wait for the 2023 season. I mean, 4 conferences we're covering. This is just going to be like amazing season, and I just can't wait to cover this.
Me too. It's going to be a lot of fun.
The season will be coming very, very quickly. So make sure you stay tuned to us. Again, follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button, get those notifications. Follow us on Twitter at SOT Podcast, on Facebook at Sports on Tap, and on Threads at SOT_podcast. One more time for our sponsors, Ray Felton State Farm Insurance, located in beautiful Hudson, Ohio. Ray provides auto, home, life, and business insurance and risk management. Call Ray at 284-5996 for more information, and check out his website, rayfelton.com, to create a personalized quote. RRT Productions delivers affordable, high-quality video services to all customers and clients. They also offer freelance services for small and large-scale events. Check them out at rrt-productions.com for more information. Last and certainly not least, GV Art and Design. Check out gvartwork.com to find your favorite professional and college team in player-themed shirts and apparel. Use the promo code ONTAP10 at checkout to get 10% off of your order. For everybody involved, for the technical director Rob Troutman, the EVP of social media content and graphic design specialist, he changes it on the spot.
Nice.
How much you want to bet he misspelled specialist?
That's all right. It's another job title.
I do it every time.
Josh Jeffy, Dr. Hoops himself, Noah Jacobson, my cohort, my colleague, my compadre, our director of hype, Sean Duffy. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ed Dick. Thank you very much for joining us on the Sports on Tap Summer Spotlight. We will see you on the other side.